we've all been told that too much red meat is bad for you. We've all been told that saturated fat, which is heavily found in red meat, is bad for you. Why is this? Well, there's a great book called The Big Fat Surprise by Nina Teicholz, and she spent the better part of a decade trying to figure out why we've been taught that saturated fat is bad for you. She went back and looked at early hunter-gatherer tribes. She found that heart disease didn't exist, obesity didn't exist, Alzheimer's didn't exist. All of these diseases that we deal with today were not prevalent in these hunter-gatherer tribes. So what were they eating? A lot of red meat and high-fat meat. In fact, some of these tribes were actually only eating fatty meats, and the lean meats they were giving to their dogs. Where did this shift in our history? Well, we can pinpoint this to the 60s when a gentleman named Ancel Keys did a study on why heart disease was increasing. He had this theory that it was the saturated fat in our diets. He ended up finding a few countries and doing studies on them that really fit this hypothesis. Specifically the country of Crete. They had a lot of people that were living well into their hundreds. So he went down and studied what they were eating, and he found they weren't eating much meat at all. They were eating a lot of seeds and a lot of nuts and a lot of olives, a lot of olive oil, and this became the Mediterranean diet. But one thing that he failed to mention in his study is that a portion of his time down there, the country was practicing Lent. And I don't know if you know anything about Lent, but you don't eat much meat at all during Lent. And also, this was a country coming off of World War II, going through extreme poverty at the time. So we have built this idea that meat is bad for you, saturated fat is bad for you, based on a study that was done on a country post-World War II during Lent. We'll leave it at that. A lot of people have debunked these theories, but Ancel Keys was very influential in his time, convinced the American Heart Association that this was going on. Many people have now tied the increase in heart attacks back to sugar. But he was very set in his ways on convincing the American people, and he did a very good job that it was the saturated fat in our diet. And if you look at the rise of obesity, of Alzheimer's, of heart disease, since the 1960s, it has skyrocketed. And that's when we introduced this idea that saturated fat is bad for you. We started using seed oils, we have ultra-processed foods, etc. Let me tell you what nutrients are in red meat, because I believed growing up that meat was just protein and fat. It's much more than that. When you are eating a steak, you are also getting vitamin B12, B3, B6, A, K. You're getting iron, selenium, zinc, creatine, carnosine, omega-3 fatty acids. That's all in your meat in abundance.